David Shaw here with another off-the-record story. If you want to learn more about Washington, D.C., come visit my site, offtherecordtours.com. Let's go. Whenever I'm showing people around Washington, someone eventually asks, what's the story with the D.C. license plates? The taxation without representation slogan reminds us of the Boston Tea Party, a time when Americans were furious about having to pay taxes to the British government without having any representation in the British Parliament. And that's the situation in Washington today. D.C. residents pay more in federal income taxes than the residents of 21 other states. But wait, there is more. More than 700,000 people live in Washington, D.C. That's more than the state of Wyoming and the state of Vermont. And like people all over our nation, Washington, D.C. residents serve in our nation's military and die in our nation's wars. So, there are more residents in Washington, D.C. and 2 other states. They all have the same responsibilities as other citizens, but still, no representation in Congress. So who is to blame for this situation? Blame Philadelphia. That's right. We can draw a direct line from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection straight to the disenfranchisement of D.C. residents. Here's what happened. It's 1783. The Continental Congress is meeting in Philadelphia inside the Pennsylvania State House, today called Independence Hall. At the same time that the Continental Congress is meeting, troops from the Revolutionary War that are stationed here in Philadelphia write Congress, requesting that they be paid for their military service. Congress, in its usual way, ignores the letter. The troops aren't happy, and they form a mob. And this Philadelphia mob, not that kind of Philadelphia mob, more like this, shows up the next day. You can see the situation. Congress is meeting on the first floor. The mob is right outside these windows in the plaza. Congress is very afraid. As an historical note, this may mark the beginning of a long tradition of Philadelphians behaving badly when in a crowd. What does Congress do to get out of this jam? They call the man with the plan, Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton meets with the mob and gets them to agree to let Congress go for the day. But later that night, Hamilton and a delegation of congressmen contacted John Dickinson. John Dickinson is the president of the Supreme Executive Council of Pennsylvania. He is the only person who can call out the militia to protect Congress. I wonder what that conversation was like. John Alexander Hamilton here. Listen, we have a real problem down at the State House. Things are really out of control. You need what? 2 tickets for Saturday night's show. John, I don't get a lot of those. They're in real demand. You could? Well, okay. I'll tell you what. I had a couple I was going to give to Aaron Burr, but you can have them. Exactly. What's he going to do? Shoot me? The result of the contact with John Dickinson was not positive. Dickinson said he would consult with the militia, but in fact, the mob and the militia, they were one and the same. And ultimately, Dickinson provided no protection to Congress. Congress, deciding the better part of valor is discretion, hightailed it out the next day to Nassau Hall in Princeton, New Jersey. And the Congress learned a lesson from this event, and that is they never wanted to be at the mercy of any other government for their protection. So in the Constitution, Congress creates its own place that it can control completely. That's Washington, D.C. However, it's not a state, and, well, we've seen what that means for the people who live here. So we have to ask ourselves the question, do 700,000 American citizens, should they be deprived of representation in Congress because of events that happened more than 230 years ago in Philadelphia? Well, I hope you enjoyed that off-the-record story. If you want to learn more about Washington, D.C., things seen and unseen, Arrange your tour of your nation's capital at offtherecordtours.com. Until then, I'm David Shaw.